If you don't learn to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. Warren Buffett said that. Do you believe him? I say there's no such thing as passive income. Passive income is a misnomer. Naps are passive. Aggression is sometimes passive, like at a family holiday with your auntie. But income is never passive. Whenever people talk about passive income, and they do a lot on social media these days, what they mean is a way for you to make money without that income being directly tied to hours you spend at a job, something totally disconnected from a time clock. Ideally, then, you can continue to make money while you sleep or sit on the beach or do whatever other activity of your choosing. Sounds really nice, doesn't it? I like it as a concept. But is that possible? Today's goal is twofold. Number one, I want to dispel the myth of cheap, easy, passive money. There are a lot of scammy people online trying to get you to think that they are making $100,000 per month working 1 hour per day from their couch and that anyone can do the same thing, especially if you buy their class or their product. They make you feel like you can get rich easy. That's a lie. Goal number two for today is to help you to quickly grasp what you really can do to make money while you sleep or play video games or whatever in a realistic way. Something you can start this year that actually works without stressing you out or making you broke. I'll speak from experience with any examples of the things that I've actually done because I want to try and save you the hassle and the time of going through the learning curve that I went through. So first, what do people claim is passive income? According to the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, passive income can come from two sources. One, rental property, or two, a business in which one does not actively participate, such as being paid book royalties for like a book that you wrote, or stock dividends for investments you've made. That mostly makes sense to me, but I would argue that even something like that isn't truly passive in the way we typically want it to be. I have the same basic problem with all the forms of passive income you see people preaching about online. Things like creating a course, writing an ebook, rental income, affiliate marketing, flipping retail products, selling photography online, buying crowdfunded real estate, dividend stocks, creating an app, renting out a parking space, REITs, a bond ladder, sponsored posts on social media, starting a YouTube channel, or anything else that people talk about. What I've noticed here is that there's a trend. It's a three-part trade-off with all these different kinds of passive income approaches. The three parts that we have to end up choosing from are time in the form of how much time you have to spend to make this thing happen or to maintain it once it's happening, money that you need to get it going or keep it going, and finally, your return, the percent gain on your money, the percent gain on your effort. And of course, we want those three things in specific amounts. We want to spend a small amount of time. That would be good. We're not spending our whole life doing this. We only spend a bit of time. We also only would need to spend a bit of money to get this kind of thing started and maintain it going. Low amount of money would be good. And finally, a high return would be good. We don't want to go through all this time and trouble and investment to only get a tiny return on our money. We want a good return, a high return. But here's the catch. You have to pick only two of those. You can't have all three. It's basically impossible. Low time spent, low money spent, or a high return. Which ones are you choosing? Let's say that you want a high gain and a low amount of maintenance. That would allow you to make lots of money and be hands-off like everyone talks about. Spend that time on the beach. Do what you want to do with your life. Well, you've chosen your two qualities, and now the third one is coming to bite you. The money needed to start it or keep it going would be huge. An example of this would be something like buying a commercial building with a triple net lease setup. What that means is that you get to be totally hands-off, and all you really have to do is collect checks every month. You're not in charge of maintenance and everything like that. You're just the owner, and you'll likely get a good return if it's the right business in the right location and all that stuff. But to do that, you'll probably need several $1,000,000, or at least massive debt to get that going. The money side comes back to bite us. All right, so that combo is a deal breaker for almost all of us because it requires that amount of capital to get started. Let's say instead the two factors we choose are a low amount of startup money and a good return. So we spend a little tiny bit to get it going, if anything, and we also want a good amount of income. Now our penalty is in the form of time. This means that you'll have to be narrowed down to the passive-ish income activities that require a ton of time from you to get the activity going and to keep it going. Namely, that means creating something from scratch that you've made, that you've thought up, and you have produced and put out into the world through hours and hours of spending your own life doing it. For a lot of us, that time is often spent just learning something valuable first. You have to learn a skill like writing or design or creating content and all that first. That takes a ton of time and trial and error. Then you have to spend the time to put all that into practice and make those things and put them out into the world. Thankfully, because we live in this day and age, you can do all that for free or literally almost for free, like for dollars, on your phone. But man, is it time consuming. Learn, make, produce, send into the world over and over and over. So with any of these passive income approaches, it's kind of like with cars. If any of you guys are car enthusiasts out there, cheap, fast, or reliable. Pick two. It's kind of like that. Low time spent, low amount of money spent, or high return. Pick two. To share some firsthand experience, I've done a bunch of the things on that list that I read earlier, and so I'll share with you what it was like to do those things. Number one, create a course. I've done it. The course is live on Skillshare as we speak, and it was a ton of work. It was actually way more work than I expected because I thought, hey, I make videos online. I can do this. Wow. It was a very different animal. You do have to know your subject matter. You have to know how to communicate it, know how to use cameras and edit the video and figure out the platform that's hosting your course and their requirements and all that stuff, but it just ended up being a lot more time than I expected. To date, I've made $30.88 on that course. It's been live for a little under a month, so let's pretend like that will keep going for, I don't know, the next couple of years. $30 a month for probably 80 hours of time spent. Not the best ROI, but if that course took off, it could make a lot of money. And as of today, just to be clear, I'm not spending any time on it. I mean, maybe I should be marketing it. That would be wise, but I'm doing absolutely nothing to talk about it or to send it out into the world. I'm strictly relying on Skillshare's algorithm to pump it out there. Another one I've done is sell photography online. I have stock photos uploaded right now to Shutterstock. For one thing, you need really compelling photos that people will be willing to pay real money for. You need to have photography skills, editing skills, understand the photo hosting site like the Shutterstock of the world or whoever else. Plus, you have to be in tune with the trends of the current seasons of the world and social movements and what people want to put on their websites or put in their presentations or whatever you do with stock photos that you buy. And so this is something that to be successful at, you have to take a lot of photos and just put it all out there and hopefully it'll pay off. A handful of these other ones are around kind of having a social media following and what that can entail on the business side. One of those is called affiliate marketing. I'm doing this too. And yet again, welcome back to it's not as simple as I thought. It was fairly difficult to get signed up and get everything kind of in line the way I needed to with each different affiliate program. But even when you do that, you have to have a big audience to start buying the stuff you mention in a video or leave a link about to benefit from it. Do you currently have a huge audience of people now who are willing to buy stuff just because you mention it? No, most of us don't. I don't even think I do. In a similar vein, sponsored posts on social media. It's quite a bit more complicated actually than affiliate marketing even, because you're now getting paid as a contractor from that particular company. If they want to sponsor you, now they're going to report that payout on their taxes, which means you have to send them a tax form. You have to review legal documents and the contract that is involved in what it means for you to make a post for them. You have to be okay with all those terms. And then of course you have to have a large and loyal following whose trust then won't be jeopardized by you selling out to that silly company who wants to pay you $400 for talking about how great their mobile game is. Whew. I've also invested in dividend stocks, in REITs. I've done a CD ladder. I have investments, if you want to call them that, in high yield savings accounts, all those kinds of ways to try and put your money to work for you. And typically they're not bad. I mean, if anything is passive, it's those, because all you have to have is the cash, put the cash to work, and then it's doing its thing for you. But just like our three-part kind of trade-off thing there, you only get a small return out of the deal. You're not spending a lot of time. You do have to spend some money, but the return just isn't that great. And of course, you'll see people recommending that you start a blog or a YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome to my biggest attempt at passive income. Let me tell you, even making just a few videos a month like I do is a minimum of 10 to 15 hours of work per week, sometimes upwards of 40 hours per week. That's just the opposite of passive. It's not passive at all. It's rewarding. It's fantastic. I love it more than any other job I've ever had in my life. And I can't do it full time yet because it's not sustainable in that way. But if it ever is, my gosh, I'll be so happy. You see the trend though. None of these things are as easy or as simple or as passive as they make it out to be. So where does that leave us? What does it actually take to create income streams that are always working for you? Well, it turns out what we really need to do this is leverage. Naval Ravikant is a billionaire business badass and says that our strategy to leverage more time than the 24 hours per day that we all have requires at least one of four resources. People, capital, code, or content. First, let's talk about people. If you start a business and hire people, they can then do work for you while you're off doing something else, or also, of course, while you're there on the business working as well. But the point is that you get the benefit of your hours of work plus their hours of work. So you get to reap the reward from that multiplication effect of all those other people also working towards your goals. It sounds pretty nice. You do, of course, have to start a business, hire people, make all of that work, be making profit. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of startup. People is the first form of leverage. The second resource to create leverage is capital. Capital is having enough money to buy your way into making a solid income with it. It's the triple net lease investing example I talked about earlier. It's funding a new business startup with money that they need to get going in return for maybe some equity in the company or some kind of agreement that you get an income stream from that investment. The tough thing about this one for most of us normal people is that we don't just have large sums of money sitting around waiting to be deployed. We can't just reach over and grab a big fat stack of cash and say, hey money, go do this work for me, turn into income for me. It's just not going to happen for us. So instead, we need to focus the most on the next two ways to create leverage. Next is code. And when Naval talks about code, he's referring to software, apps, games, and anything else in that realm that you can create once and then benefit from forever. I personally have no idea how to code, how to design an app, how to do any of that. I have no idea. But if I was really motivated to learn, I could turn off Only Murders in the Building, I could unplug the TV, I could lock my phone in another room, and I could learn it. We all can. We are all actively choosing not to because it's a lot of work. But this category in particular, this coding, out of all four ways to generate leverage, is probably the most impactful one overall. Think about the richest people in the world. Gates, Bezos, Musk, Zuckerberg, the top people over at Google. They all benefit from coding power. They've created things that can be infinitely replicated and sold again and again and again without incurring any or hardly any additional cost to reproduce them. Imagine how insane people would think you were if you went back in time like 100 years or even 50 years ago and you told them you could create a game at home on your couch and then without leaving the couch, sell that game to billions of people all over the world and become filthy rich doing it. That's the power we're all holding nowadays. But I think unless you're inclined to put in that hard work to learn it, or you're already a computer whiz, the final form of leverage, this fourth one, will end up being the best. And more people are taking advantage of it nowadays. You see it all over the place. It's your good friend, content. And all that means is books, podcasts, online video, photos, could be music, all the things people do on social media. And on a small scale, think about it like this. All the things that movie stars and TV stars and musicians do. They go and they put in a bunch of hard work up front, then that thing continues to roll and make them money as it gets distributed to the world. And you can be one of those people. You can end up with a large following and big sponsorships and a way more interesting career than the one you have, all by creating content. And studies nowadays are showing that that's the dream job of a ton of younger people. Why would they dream of sitting at an office somewhere doing someone else's boring kind of objective for $37,000 a year when they could go and make $50,000 a year doing baking lessons on YouTube or showing clips of them fishing across the Everglades on TikTok and getting brand deals from really cool outdoor companies? Of course, they're going to choose that over the office job. If you're feeling some resistance to that, I get you, because there's a lot of excuses why we can't do this, including probably the biggest one, which is that huge cringy feeling that we all get when we start talking into a camera. Trust me though, you get used to it. I think of making a video like a chance to have a one-on-one conversation with like 20,000 people just individually. I happen to have this huge privilege to get to be here with you in this room or in your car or on a walk or wherever we are, and that's an amazing thing. It's also okay if you take me in the bathroom. I like a good bathroom video too. It's important that you know that you can also make content. The key here, if you do want to do that, is to pick something that you are endlessly interested in, that you can talk about day in and day out for years, and at the same time something that other people are also interested in enough to watch videos or read about or otherwise engage in. If you can overlap those two things and get over all those reasons you have to not start, you'll be golden. Without deeply diving into at least some of those four forms of leverage, we simply aren't going to be able to build wealth quickly, let alone do it passively. Think about which one you could realistically start this year. I'm going to ask you about it at the end of this video. Even though nothing online on those videos or those lists of passive income ideas are actually 100% passive, there are recurring residual sources of income that are a beautiful thing. That's why I don't use that dirty word passive when I talk about this kind of income. I call it momentum income. It's like if you've ever pushed your car when it's run out of gas. At first you push really, really hard and the car does nothing. Like it's not even moving at all. And then if you keep pushing, it will just barely start to budge. And then if you continue and continue, it'll slowly start to roll until finally it's moving enough to really only require a bit of force to keep it going. It's got that momentum. Since people like me and you don't have money to do that initial pushing for us, we really need to dig into the discipline required to spend time on a potentially profitable passion project. We may need to work on it for 2 or 3 years without seeing a single dollar of profit, just learning, absorbing material, learning how to use the necessary tools to do the things we've chosen, but finally, after there's enough movement, that car will be rolling along and require much less sweat equity to keep it moving. Now we have our dream of momentum income. Here's a list of my 3 favorite categories for generating momentum income. Number 1 is the easiest by far, and that's investing the money you have. The beauty of investing, which I've kind of gone over in previous videos, but a lot of people still don't really grasp the concept, is even if you don't have a lot, you can put it to work for you. And even though that feels bad because 8% on $100 is pennies, it's $8, the point is that that ball is rolling. If you're interested in that, you have a few different ways you can go. If we're starting with the least risky things, a high yield savings account like Yada or Prize Pool could totally work. You could get 1 to 4% interest there. You could go really old school and go to a bank and just buy CDs to get you started, but those are super, super low returns, so that's not great. And if that's not enough for you, then you can consider stepping it up a notch in terms of complexity and risk and potentially returns, going into something like dividend investing or crowdfunding real estate, because that opens up a lot more options for you and a lot more choices. It's still not a huge ROI. It's probably something like 2 to 5%, but hey, that's very passive and it's income. If you're determined to have a bigger ROI than that, then making content is really the way to go. It's the lowest startup cost in terms of dollars and the biggest possible earning potential with those very few dollars. People who write ebooks or have a podcast or a successful blog, even if people still blog nowadays, let me know if you still look at any blogs nowadays. I think I still look at cooking and financial blogs, and that's kind of it. All those kind of people that are making stuff online, they haven't been given any special superpower to do that. And no one gave them permission. No one came and said one day, now you're a good enough writer to write this ebook. They just went out and did it. And they failed and failed and failed until they stopped failing eventually because they learned enough. And that's what you and I have to do too if we want to make content. The third category that I could see totally working, although I've done absolutely none of, is renting out things you already own. Places like Airbnb, Turo, Spinlister, and Fredish for musical instruments are all ways that you can take something that you have, rent it to other people, and just collect cash in the meantime. You've probably heard of people having whole businesses around having a home that they own strictly for Airbnb rentals. A similar thing happens with cars on Turo. There's people that have fleets of cars that are sitting there waiting to be rented for people on Turo. Maybe they're not sitting that much because they're being rented. I've used it a few times and it's honestly been really great. I mean, it's way more interesting of a car typically than the ones you get at a rental counter. So that's why I did it. But hey, in that case, it's a win-win. I got an interesting car. They made some money. Everyone's happy. Spinlister is a similar thing where you can rent your bike. I know there's other ones for tools, garage space. We have a lot of opportunity to take these things that are already around us and just do some legwork to get them out there in the world and collect the cash in the meantime. So as it turns out, passive income isn't actually very passive, but it is doable for us if we leverage what we have in the right ways. If you're interested in increasing your income and you want to do it at your full-time job now to really maximize your earning potential as quickly as possible, you need to watch this video to see my 7 tips on how to do that, plus one more bonus tip at the end. If you do that and you take advantage of these ways to create leverage in your life, maybe you make some content, you can really, really boost your income. It could get crazy. Hey, for fun, today's secret comment word is which of the 4 forms of leverage would you pick that I mentioned from Naval Ravikant? If you had to get started in the next 90 days, would you pick people, capital, code, or content?